Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. So in the past few weeks, I've been starting to ramp up my coverage of the 2025 Virginia and New Jersey governor elections, as they are the two major elections happening in November of 2025 at the state level. But there are also a few other elections happening in the state of Virginia, one of which being the lieutenant governor election, which could potentially be very competitive, just as much competitive as the governor's race as well. So I'm going to start by focusing on the Democrats because there's more candidates running in this race, and then I'll talk about the Republicans briefly after as well. The 6 Virginia Democrats currently running for the crowded lieutenant governor primary. There are 6 notable candidates, and I'm going to pull up now the Wikipedia page just to go over what's going on here. So there are 6 Democrats running. There's Alex Bastani, an attorney, Ghazala Hashmi, a state senator, Babur Latif, a chair of Prince William County School Board, Aaron Ruse, a state senator, Victor Salgado, federal prosecutor, and Levar Stoney, a former mayor of Richmond and former Virginia Secretary of the Commonwealth. So right now there's also a lot of interesting endorsements that have been made in this Democratic primary. Hashmi has endorsements from Ro Khanna and Leslie Byron, one U.S. rep from California, another U.S. rep from Virginia, notable state legislatures as well. Babur Latif has the endorsement or the co-endorsement with Levar Stoney from the former governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, who did lose to Glenn Youngkin very narrowly in 2021. Aaron Ruse has the endorsement of 2 Virginia reps, Elaine Luria and Bobby Scott of the 2nd and 3rd congressional districts, and also many state legislatures as well, in the mayor of Newport News, Philip Jones. And Levar Stoney has the endorsement of Ann Holton, Terry McAuliffe, and Michael Schewel as well. The polling for this race, there hasn't been too many polls that have been conducted right now. There was only 2. The last poll was from the end of February to beginning of March, and it showed Levar Stoney with a narrow lead at 16%. Aaron Ruse was in second with 10%. Hashmi was in third with 8%, and Babur Latif had 2%. Still 63% of the vote undecided in that poll. In another poll from later on in March by GBAO Strategies, it showed Ruse and Stoney tied at 15% apiece, with Hashmi at 13%, Latif again at 2%, and still 63% of the vote. So this is actually very interesting. Unless more polls come out in the next few weeks or so, by the time Virginia has its primary, this is a wide open race that both polls show a close race within the margin of error in 1 out of the 2, with a large percentage of undecideds, meaning we really don't know who's going to win this Democratic primary for lieutenant governor, and that can make things very, very interesting. On the Republican primary side of things, so there was 2 candidates in the race. Pat Harity, a Fairfax County supervisor, had to drop out of the race due to health concerns, I believe is what it was. So that made John Reid the Republican nominee for lieutenant governor. And then a few days after Reid became the Republican nominee by default, there was a report alleging sexual explicit images and posts published on Reid's page on the platform Tumblr. The governor of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, called on him to drop out of the race. Reid denied making the post and pledged to remain in the race, and that's where things kind of stand right now. Looks like Reid's going to stay on the ballot through the November elections, and everything's going to kind of end at that. But that certainly could be a potential big scandal to watch for in the election that should be already Democratic leaning as it is. That could be a very big scandal that ends up hurting the Republicans even more. So unless something, actually the primaries on April 21st essentially already happened, with, even though the primaries take place on June 17th, even though they basically already happened on the Republican side, it will be John Reid versus one of the Democrats. As for things go on that point, we don't have any polling for a general election between these candidates yet. So all we know is it's going to be John Reid versus one of the Democrats. We can look back at 2021, where in the lieutenant governor election, this was Winom Sears running with Glenn Youngkin. The governor and lieutenant governor in Virginia are elected technically separately, even though they can run like as a joint ticket, like Glenn Youngkin for governor, Winom Sears lieutenant governor. People in the Commonwealth of Virginia have to get out and vote for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general all on the same ballot. Winom Sears won over her Democratic opponent, Hala Ayala, 50.7% to 49.17%, and a very close win. Sears running about 0.2% better than Glenn Youngkin did in the state of Virginia in a very, very close race. Looking at the polling kind of resembled the governor's race as well. Most of the early polls showed the Democrat leading, with a fewer handful of Republican polls here and there showing Sears being able to break ahead, but most of them had the Democrat ahead until the last week or so of the election, when the polls started to rebound and the Republicans started to get momentum going into the race. Sears had 2 polls in a row from Trafalgar and Echelon Insights that showed her narrowly polling ahead in a very, very close lead. And that comes to Election Day, when Winom Sears wins with 50.71% to 49.17% from Hala Ayala. That's how things went in 2021. I'm going to pull up now the 2017 map as well, since 2017 was the first first off-year election following President Trump becoming president, and we think 2025 is going to be something pretty similar to 2017. So in 2017, we saw the lieutenant governor nominee Justin Fairfax. He won by 52.72% against his Republican opponent Jill Vogel, 47.18% for her. This race, actually, interestingly enough, being about a 5.5 point win or so for Fairfax, ended up being closer than the governor's race, where Ralph Northam defeated Ed Gillespie by 53.9% to 44.97%. Approximately a 9-point win in the governor's race, only about a 5.5% win in the lieutenant governor's race. So that's very interesting. Looking down to the polling for the general election here, let's see. We can see that, again, it kind of very much similar to what we see in 2025 so far. The Democrat was leading in every single poll throughout the spring and summer, and then going into the fall of 2017. Only one poll showed Jill Vogel leading over Fairfax. Roanoke College had it tied, but all the polls had Fairfax winning by about 5 to 6%, depending on the poll. And then at the end of the election, he ended up winning by about 5.5% in the general election for Fairfax. So the polls actually seem pretty accurate towards the end of the race in the state of Virginia for the lieutenant governor's race. As I mentioned, for 2025, we don't currently have any polling information yet for the general election, but as for the state of Virginia, if I'm going to make a prediction on this race, right now I currently have the Democrats winning the governor's race in Virginia by more than 5 points, but under 15%, which by the margins that I use would be likely Democratic. For the lieutenant governor's race, I don't think it's going to be that much of a difference. I think it's going to be likely Democratic, where the Democrats will win, whoever the Democrat ends up being, by likely 5%, but under 15%. The margins of which are going to be really tough, because right now President Trump's approval rating is at 45%. It's going to be a big if his approval numbers go up or down from now until November. His history suggests they should go down, but by how much is going to be the question. Right now, I'd start Virginia off, though, as likely Democrat. Probably we're going to see something around like a 7 to 8 point win for lieutenant governor's race right now. Hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment below telling me your thoughts, and I hope to see you in the next video.